How can one generation learn from another? Do you think that you would be able to handle, or even imagine, living the majority of your childhood without any kind of electricity? I know I wouldn't. However, the stories from my grandmother have told me about how hard it was back then. My grandmother lived in a rural part of Missouri, so power lines weren't able to run any electricity to her house. Nowadays, we have a lot of options because of it. But back then, without electricity, all they had were wood-burning stoves to keep warm in the chilly winters. Since they didn't have preheated water for baths, they had to warm up the water on the stove and pour it into the bathtub. Another way my grandmother's dad would keep them warm at night was that he took a brick and warmed it on the stove. Then he would wrap it in a thick layer of newspaper and put it under their mattress, under their feet, which would keep them warm. A major responsibility for my grandmother was to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Why? To herd the milk cows into the barn for milking. It wasn't a glorious task, with the cows not always going the right way and trying not to be stampeded, but it had to be done. That was one of the main ways her family made money back then, and she did all of this before walking to the bus stop to go to school in rain or shine. At the end of the day, when all of the outside chores were through, there was one more to be done: homework. But how would you be able to do your homework after the sun went past the horizon and without any electricity? By using oil lamps or candles, of course. They may not have been great, but they gave off just enough light to ward off the darkness away. By the time everything that had to be done was finished, you didn't dawdle until go to bed. You were ready.
Quote unquote.
Yeah, quotes. There have been a lot of changes in the way people do things over the course of 3 generations, or about 60 to 70 years. After listening to my grandmother tell her detailed stories, I've learned that life was harder and more complicated in the late 1940s. I would definitely encourage other kids my age to talk to their grand or great grandparents about how they lived back then and ask questions about it.
Very good.